Talking of shows, has anyone got any stories about riders? People love to hear about rock and roll riders and strange demands from acts.
Jools Holland. If you ever book the Jools Holland Big Band, you get like the biggest rider you've ever seen, apart from, I think, J-Lo or Beyonce. And I'm sure he does it just to get rid of people. There's things on it like 36 first-class stamps. and postcards from some local landmark. It goes on, and there's endless different types of drinks, endless different foods, etc., etc. I think it's just a way of... Oh, and he has to have a car from London to wherever it is. So, yeah, he's good.
When I was at Arista, we had Manilow, and one of Manilow's riders was, whenever he did a promo, there had to be 6 chilled bottles of Briley Fumé and 6 chilled 1.5 litre bottles of Evian within 20 yards of him at all times. Now, in the UK, we just used to fuck that. You can whistle for that. But, when you go to Germany, those guys take everything by the letter. And then to be a promo guy carrying a chill case with 6 bottles of Briley Fumé round after Barry Manilow through airports, into railway stations, and 6 bottles. They really should take it seriously. I don't think Manilow ever realised what was going on, to be honest.
Chris, have you got any artists that made demands?
Not that I can remember. It was, yes, of course, it was excess, really. But I do remember, since I've lived in Bewdley, which is since 2007, I've worked with Bewdley Festival, and I can remember years ago a comment about riders said, we don't take any notice of riders. They've got a room, which is their dressing room, which is actually one of the bedrooms in the hotel. And, we provide whatever they need. And, of course, most of the artists, they don't remember what they got on their riders. And therefore, it didn't make any difference. And we never had any problems at all.
Yeah, well, there's that, I think I may have mentioned it before on here, the Grace Jones one, where I took Grace Jones into a dressing room and it was for a charity gig, it was for the Prince's Trust or something, and so it wasn't that lavish, and she said, what is this shit? I can't have any of this! And she swept it all off the table with her arm, and everything clattered onto the floor. And she said, I want oysters and Krug champagne. And I said, but Grace, this is for the charity. Maybe you should just put up, just for today, can you just make do with the cheese and onion crisps and the bottle of Vimto that we've given you? But I suppose I can make an exception.
It's funny with someone like Grace Jones, is that some people who look nasty very rarely are nasty. And I met her once at the club, and she was... because she was going out with Dolph Lundgren, that's right. And but she was disgusting. It's just people, you think it's an act, but it's the old adage: I may look like an idiot and act like an idiot, but don't be fooled, I really am an idiot. You know what I mean?
Oh, she's great. I love her. She's a lovely. She's bonkers, but
she is great. She's a really special person. We did talk about this last time, yeah.
Yeah.
I did a show once with, you'll appreciate this, Neville, with Shirley Bassey in Monte Carlo at the International Sporting Club. And she had a rider that was fairly comprehensive, but we had to bring in the particular brand of caviar from London, in a frozen pack or chilled pack or whatever. And I had to get all this particular champagne, which actually cost an absolute small fortune. And then after the show, she was great show, everything was fine. And she said, did you get my, what I wanted? So we gave her the caviar. She said, yeah, that's perfect. I said, look, I've heard about this, but seriously, when do you eat it? She said, well, I always have it on my jacket potato in the morning. And you can read about that in lots of stories. I did that from the time I first started becoming famous. And I said, oh, what about all the champagne? She said, oh, I always order that. She said, make sure you grab it all because we're going now to drink that with the crew. And that's the first artist that's ever done that. I've never known normally grab the wine, grab the beer, back of the car, off to my head.
That's it, yeah.
Fantastic, She was.
I remember when I was looking after Leo Sayer. Leo Sayer had a really huge minder bloke. and they travelled in this big limousine, and Leo was doing a live show for Southern Television. My parents lived around the area, so when they said to me, "Do you know that area?" I said, "No problems at all." I missed they were following me. I missed the turning, and we ended up on a hill, and we could see STV in the distance. And I looked at my watch, and the show had already started. So we missed the show. I remember the bouncer coming up to me and in no uncertain terms threatening me. And I just got in my car and sped away. And I never worked with him again. And it was really, really, really embarrassing.
Did you know stories about road crew playing practical jokes on their charges? Because I know there's a famous one on tour. You were talking about Spinal Tap earlier. Sting was on tour in the days when he would still travel in the coach. It had been a long tour, and he'd been watching Spinal Tap pretty well every time they got in the coach. He kept watching it and watching it and watching it. Loved it to death, and people were starting to get a little bit wound up by the fact that they were watching Spinal Tap yet again. And it was the last night of the tour in Paris. The encore was Fortress Round My Heart. And so he was up there playing away and singing, when I build this fortress, that's all going away. And and the whole audience is looking up at him. He's looking down at them, all laughing. And he was trying to work out why they're all laughing. And he turned round, and above him was a miniature toy fort being lowered from above.
Brilliant.
A little toy castle coming down his head.
He would have hated that.
There are some people you just feel like Sting deserves that for some obscure reason.
I palmed him off with the Duchess of Kent once. And I don't know if you ever know the Duchess of Kent. She was the one with the blonde hair that used to do Wimbledon. Completely batty. She was sort of patron of various charities, and she happened to be at some award show or the other. And I was in the green room. I took her to the green room and sort of gave her a glass of wine. And she said, oh, this is lovely. A wine, how wonderful. Yes, yes. And then she picked up the bottle and kind of held on to the bottle and kept topping herself up and didn't let anyone else have any. And I said, it's time to go to the stage now. And she goes, oh, yes, lovely, lovely. And she waddles along and she follows me. And she was about to walk out onto the stage to give the award with the bottle and the glass, which I had to kind of take away from her. And we do our bit. And when we come back through, Sting's there, because I think he was on sort of later on. He was just standing in the corridor. And, I said... and she said, oh, look, hello. And they started chatting. And I said, I just couldn't get rid of her. She was following me around like a lost puppy. And I just thought, here's my chance. I saw Sting. I said, Sting, have you met the Duchess of Kent? Introduced her, and then I ran off. And then she was stuck with him for several hours. And then later on, I passed him again in the corridor, and he looked at me and he said, I want a word with you. I'll be there for the rest of the time. He doesn't have much of a sense of humour.
Stuck with royalty.
I do remember there was another one in Paris, actually, end of tour for Peter Gabriel, and it was on the Secret World Tour, and Robert Lepage had designed this amazing double stage with a circular one in the middle of the auditorium and a square one at the end, and a sort of conveyor belt that went between the two of them. And the end of the show was to do with travel. And so all this fake luggage would come down as though it was, the luggage, the baggage claim section of an airport would be passing by, and Peter and the band were on the centre stage singing away and playing away. And this stuff would drop down a hole in the middle of the circular stage in the middle of the hall. And as it was going through, the roadies had realised earlier on that the place where they were performing was a place where they often had circuses and big theatre, and there were all these amazing props backstage. So the usual luggage came through, and then the clothes racks with all the costumes from the departments there, and then an 8-foot high model of the Statue of Liberty. Stuff. And it all kept through, and they're all playing away looking at this, and it was never ending as well, because they had to keep it, and it was all gone.
Like the generation game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Toy.